Clearwater, Florida. We are so happy to have you joining us today for our special event about fasting. So we have our special guest today with us, Nabil Moghaddam. He is a certified nutritional therapist and a detoxification specialist. He's also a graduate of homeopathy from the Canadian College of Homeopathic Medicine in Toronto. He's passionate about awakening the awareness in practitioners and the public alike to natural health, homeopathy, detoxification, and to see how mineral imbalances affect both the physical and the mental health. And of course, helping people in general through evidence-based nutritional guidance. There is such a lack of awareness and training in most nutritional and medical programs, he says, as to how mineral imbalances affect all aspects of health. And if you want to learn more, you can visit his website at www.soreadyforhealth.com/about. Again, that is www.soreadyforhealth.com/about. Now, this week's topic is God-made fasting versus man-made fasting. Fasting has become very popular in the natural health movement over the past few years. Water fasting, fasting from carbs, the keto diet, juice fasting, intermittent dry fasting, etc. In this presentation, Nabil will be sharing a few ways in which divinely designed fasting is far superior to man-made fasting, and particularly in what regards, like safety and healing. So with that being said, Nabil, welcome. It's nice to see you this morning.
Thank you, John. Thanks for the intro. Thank you guys for having me. So yeah, today's topic, I decided to choose the title man-made or God-made fasting versus man-made fasting because throughout my research, throughout the years and my studies along the way, I've basically discovered a few things which I'm going to share with you today. Hopefully you'll learn something new, which basically for me has proven that God-made fasting is far superior, not only in what pertains to safety, because as many of you probably already know, different types of fasting can be quite dangerous, but also in what pertains to the health benefits or the health effects. So I'm going to share with you guys a few things, and keep in mind that everything I share with you today is really only my own opinion. It's not an official representation of the Baha'i faith. I'm just a guy who strives to be a Baha'i. So I'm going to share a few of my findings with you, and that's it. Hopefully get the juices, the inspirational juices started so that we can then have maybe a discussion towards the second half. Okay, ready to rock and roll? Let's get this party started. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to share is that, as many of you probably know, there are so many different types of fasting, and it's become quite popular over the past maybe 10, 15 years. Dry fasting, intermittent fasting, juice fasting, fasting from carbohydrates known as the ketogenic diet, and many, many more. You may have done many of these different types of fasts. You may know of some friends. I have a friend who every year goes and does a 40-day water fast, And so one of the issues with these different types of fasting is safety. Because if you've seen photos, you may have seen a couple of YouTubers, and there's a lot of danger in it. You see their before and after photos where some of them are skin and bones. And when you deprive the body of nourishment for such a long time, for 1 week, 2 weeks, no food, sometimes 3 weeks and 1 month, like the water fasting, prolonged water fasting, then what can happen is the body becomes very malnourished, and you can even potentially experience life-threatening situations. So with the Baha'i fast, this is not the case. With the Baha'i fast, we're not depriving the body, prolonged periods of time from food. As you know, we eat something very little in the morning before sunrise, and then we break the fast after after sunset. So, and we do this for 19 days. We're eating food basically every day. It's just a 12 to 16 hour period every day where we don't eat food. We deprive the body of food. And if you look at it in one way, you're only depriving your body of lunch because you're having breakfast and you're having dinner. So all you're doing is not eating lunch. So very safe. For those, there are many people who say, oh my God, they tell me sometimes, I've received this comment, you're already a skinny guy, should you be depriving yourself of more food? Aren't you going to wither away and die? And the answer is no. I mean, millions of Baha'is worldwide for the past 180 years are doing the Baha'i fast, and nobody, to my knowledge, has ever died by doing the Baha'i fast. So, so that's when it comes to the aspect of malnutrition, the Baha'i faith, the Baha'i fast, there's no danger of malnutrition. Whereas with many of these other man-made fasts, malnutrition can happen and does happen. Another thing I wanted to share is what pertains to dry fasting, because a lot of people are doing fasts, they want to do fasts, but they don't want to do dry fasting. They're scared of doing dry fasting. So they'll do juice fasting, they'll do water fasting, right? They'll do water fasting for 40 days, but they're scared of doing the opposite, of not drinking water for periods of time. Because there's a huge fear in our society and a huge propaganda of hydrate yourself, hydrate yourself. You may have seen these memes going around on Facebook and the internet where they're saying, you got to drink water first thing in the morning, got to drink water last thing at night before going to bed. When you go to the shower, when you come out of the shower, before you eat, after you eat. So huge fear revolving around dehydration. And so a lot of people, including some Baha'is, even myself growing up, I would certain times, depending on what I was doing, I would abstain from food, but then I'd decide, okay, I can't abstain from water because of such and such. I'm going to drink water. And I know many friends and other people who do that, who decide to do that. Because as we know, the main emphasis is spiritual. If you focus on the spiritual, then you're going to win the jackpot when it comes to the good pleasure of your Lord. So over the years, I've gained some insight into the benefits, the physical benefits of dry fasting. So the withholding from drinking water. One of them is that, sorry guys, give me 1 second here. Let me just close this window. Let that be a reminder for all of you to turn off your phones and any other notifications. Where is that?
That is a great reminder. A great reminder.
Guys, give me 1 second here. Close this window. There we go. No more ringing bells going off. Okay, so back on track. So some of the benefits of dry fasting, abstaining from water, because we have such a huge fear. Oh my God, I'm not going to drink water for a few days. So one of them is this dehydration, this temporary dehydration, which takes place throughout the day. Again, it's not it's not a dangerous dehydration that takes place because, again, you're drinking in the morning and you're drinking in the evening. It's really a temporary daily drought which we induce through the fast. One of the things that it does is it starves infections of water. And as some of you may already know, infections thrive from humidity, from water, from dampness. And case in point, fungal infections. We're dealing with an epidemic of fungal infections because of the indiscriminate use of modern day antibiotics, which wipe out the good competitors, the good bacteria, the natural competitors of this single cell fungi candida, which exists in your gut. One dose of antibiotic is enough to start allowing this opportunistic fungus to start growing in your gut. Over the years, it becomes systemic, and now you have a systemic fungal infection. So this drought that takes place over 19 days will, to some extent, reduce these infections. That's one insight. The other one is, for those of you who are familiar with traditional Chinese medicine, you may have learned that they are huge on, and they teach the concept of damp heat and just heat in general, excess dampness in the human body. And that many of the diseases, modern day diseases, is caused because of excess cool dampness and warm dampness, just dampness in general. And so this mini drought that we induce over the 19 days reduces the dampness in the body, in the spleen, and improves many of these modern day illnesses, which they talk about. And that's what the Chinese traditional doctors do with the usage of herbs and with a change of diet by consuming more drying foods and less damp foods, and by using herbs which rid the body of excess dampness and accumulated fluids, over time will restore the equilibrium in the body and improve the health of the patient. So by dry fasting, over the span of 19 days, we reduce this excess dampness, which they talk about. The next one is through the induction. Is that a word? I'm not sure. Through the inducing of this mini drought, this safe drought throughout the 19 days, we cause a survival of the fittest of every cell in your body, because the healthy cells in your body can produce their own water, and those which aren't healthy won't be able to. And so survival of the fittest, the weak cells in your body will basically die off, and your healthy ones will survive. The weak ones will be replaced with healthier ones, also through the process of autophagy. So those are a few insights when it comes to the fear of withholding from water. Oh my God. I'm sure you have so many friends, just like I have throughout the years. They can understand abstention from food, autophagy, but they're like, oh my God, but are you serious? Are you sure that not drinking water for 12 to 16 hours, is that safe? So these are some ideas that you can throw at them to kind of open their minds. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is autophagy. So we've just left the topic of water. We're entering into a new topic, which is that of autophagy, which many of you have heard. I think this is the most well-known effect of fasting, which is in the absence of food, in the absence of nourishment, your body has to find another source of nourishment, because otherwise you're going to self-destruct and basically be no more. So in the absence of nourishment, your body has to find another source of food, nourishment. And what it begins to do is it starts to recycle the weakest cells in your body, such as those who weren't able to produce their own water. It will start to recycle mitochondria, which are not functioning properly, misfolded proteins, et cetera, et cetera. So any component in your body which is weak, it'll start to first digest those and recycle those. And by doing so, your body will then replace those weak components with healthier new versions. So you're going to be made anew, just like springtime, just like everything in nature is made anew. Your body from the cellular level, it's going to be renewed. So many people know about this concept of autophagy. But one of the things I want to emphasize on is the way the Baha'i fast is designed, the way it's designed by God, activates autophagy and enables autophagy and maximizes autophagy more than any other kind of fast. More than any other kind of fast. And the reason for this is, one, the period of fasting. We fast from food for what, 12 to 16 hours every day, plus or minus. But some people, you know, they fast for 4 hours, 6 hours. You know, they'll eat, they do dry intermittent fasting, maybe for 6 hours a day, right? Maybe they'll do juice fasting. So they're supplying the body with nutrients and nourishment all the time. So there's no opportunity for the body to enter into autophagy when you're supplying the body with nutrition all the time. So that's an example as to how juice fasting, for example, won't allow your body to go into autophagy. But the Baha'i fast, divinely designed, deprives your body of nourishment for a good amount of time, like 12 to 16 hours, so that your body eventually has to start recycling itself. And you notice this. We notice this. For example, you have your breakfast. If you have a moderate breakfast, if you have just enough to activate the metabolic processes and the detoxification cycle, the circadian cycle in the morning, then what you'll find is that you start to get hungry by 11 a.m., right? Noon. And so you're going to hunger for, like, by the time it's sunset, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., that's like 8-9 hours of hunger. And your body is scouting for things to recycle, to produce ATP. So a lot of autophagy going on, basically, is my point with the Baha'i fast. The other thing is the fact that we rise during before sunrise, essentially, and we are awake during when the sun is out, and then we break the fast when the sun goes down. This is critical too, in contrast to, for example, other types of intermittent dry fasting or just normal fasting, which a lot of people do. I have friends who do it because intermittent fasting has become quite popular too. What they will do is they don't understand the importance of combining the dry intermittent fasting with the natural clock, which is the sun, which is what religious fasting does, divinely designed fasting does. So what they will do, for example, I have many friends who are pretty woke when it comes to the fasting movement, and I have one friend in particular, for example, who eats his meal. He eats dinner. He eats a good big dinner and then fasts for 24 hours. And so he goes to sleep, after dinner, 1 hour, 2 hours later, goes to sleep and is sleeping during most of the fast. So there's a huge difference. They're sleeping during most of the fast. And so on the one hand, they're not expending energy. It's important to expend energy, be awake when the sun is out, expend energy so that your body will need to find resources, to burn more resources, right? Recycle more, to enter into autophagy. If you're sleeping the whole night, right, you just had a big fat meal, you go to sleep, Your body doesn't need energy. It's not going to do any autophagy at all. You're just sleeping all the way to the morning, right? And then you don't eat breakfast. You're not activating metabolism, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how that can compromise the beneficial effects of fasting. The other thing is the importance of coordinating it with the sun, because we as a human species, within the human species, we evolved, and everything on this planet, all our physiological, biological functions are orchestrated and directed by the sun. Your digestive power, your digestive heat, your hormones, as the sun hits your eyes, it activates, sorry guys, I hit the microphone. It activates your pineal gland. As the sun goes down, melatonin starts coming up, cortisol starts going down. So as you can see, every function of your body, the circadian cycles you may have heard of, detoxification in the morning, appropriation throughout the day, assimilation at night. So if you're not awake during the fast, you won't be able to maximize the detoxification, the healing, and the autophagy, all of these healing processes which take place, which are activated by the sun, You know, growing up, teenagers, a lot of us were guilty of doing this, where you think you can cheat the system and you can basically, well, if the Baha'i fasting is from sunrise to sunset, well, I'm going to sleep from sunrise to sunset. And I'm going to stay awake all night and eat what I want, right? So who are you fooling? You're only fooling yourself. So anyway, so that's just a few thoughts about, I think that in itself already shares a lot of insight into how divinely designed fasting is so beneficial in so many ways. You know, and the more you dive deep, I'm sure there's so many more wisdoms which you guys have discovered, which you can share in the second half. But just enough to show you guys, to share with you guys how I believe the divinely designed fasting is far superior to man-made fasting and maximizes its healing potential. It's far safer, etc. Before I end, another 5 minutes on how divinely designed fasting is far superior, because it goes way beyond the physical. As you know, all of these types of man-made fasting, I have not known of any man-made fasting where they focus on the spiritual. I don't know of any. I've never seen any. I don't know of any. The only type that focuses on the spiritual is religious fasting, essentially, which is made by God, the divine manifestation. Because juice fasting, you know, you go to a retreat and do some sort of fasting, there might be some sort of a emotional component for you to help you resolve your issues, your childhood issues, your inflamed ego, your traumas. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll find a retreat like that. But the most beautiful thing, the most valuable thing that God-made fasting gives us, bestows or gifts us with, is that of spiritual awakening. That of spiritual awakening. I want to share a quote with you guys. Give me a second here. And this quote is from the Baha'i writings. This material fast is an outer token of the spiritual fast. It is a symbol of self-restraint, the withholding of oneself from all appetites of the self, taking on the characteristics of the spirit, being carried away by the breathings of heaven, and catching fire from the love of God. So the fast, one of my favorite times I look forward to one of the greatest blessings and greatest mercies, gifts of God to man, because it causes this spiritual awakening. It reawakens us to the purpose of physical reality, why we are here, and redirects us basically to focusing on preparation, preparing our souls for the eternal worlds of God. Just like the baby, the fetus, while in the world of the womb of its mother, it's preparing its faculties and its organs for this world in the same manner as we've been taught by all the divine prophets of God, whether you're a Jew, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Baha'i, Christian, etc. Every single divine prophet has taught unanimously. They have taught us that we are pilgrims in this world. We are tourists. That this life, we should not attach ourselves to this life. They all tread the path of detachment, of purity of heart, sanctity of spirit. And they were always, what? Teaching us about the eternal worlds of God, the kingdom of heaven, having been created in his image to die to the human condition and be recreated in his divine eternal qualities, and thereby attaining eternal life. Because these divine virtues, these divine qualities, these names of God, trustworthiness, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, etc., etc., these are essential requisites, or you could say spiritual organs and faculties which we will need to navigate and appreciate the eternal worlds of God. So the fast, the true fast, is fasting from, Baha'u'llah says, he says that the mere abstention from food and drink means nothing. It is merely it's meant to serve as a symbol, a reminder of this fasting from the things of this world, fasting from our desires, our lusts, from working too hard, an overachiever, from smoking, from numbing your pain, from addiction to entertainment, from distractions, being distracted all the time, but getting caught up in the hus and bus of society, getting caught up in the anxiety and fear of this crisis that we're in the midst of right now, kind of pulling us out of that and reminding us, hey, you are in essence a spiritual being, not a physical being. Stop obsessing about the things of this world. Stop creating these strong obsessions and vices and addictions to the things of this world. And let's basically recenter you, put your eyes back on the prize, on the purpose of this physical reality, and strengthen and nourish our spiritual reality, so that then our higher nature, leading into the new year, which for Baha'is begins on the first day of spring, leading into the new year, our higher nature reclaims control of our lower nature and sets the horse being the body, the rider being our soul. The soul reclaims control of the horse, the body, and sets it in the right direction towards perfection, essentially. So this is the greatest benefit of the fast. And this is what we focus on mainly as Baha'is. What kind of fast, what kind of man-made fast ever even hints, even hints to the life of the spirit, and freeing yourself from these addictions and these vices which impede your spiritual, the expression of your soul, and impede from you maximizing the expression of your potentialities in this life, of bearing fruit in this life, which fasting even, ever focuses on that, man-made fasting? None. So this is why, I'm sure many of you would agree, the greatest benefit is the spiritual aspect of divinely designed fasting. And to Let's see here. And then lastly, I want to share, I made a note of detachment. I wanted to share something practical with you in this regard of strengthening your higher nature. Because when I was growing up, I knew that we had this spiritual component, and that abstaining from food and drink was designed to strengthen my willpower. By strengthening my willpower when it comes to food and drink, then I would then be able to translate this strengthened willpower to other aspects of my life. And although this is true to a certain degree, it's not nearly as close to what I understand to be what makes much more sense now to me. Because how can I express this? So okay. So basically, yeah, so the concept is through deprivation, I'm going to strengthen my willpower, essentially, through deprivation. That was my understanding in the past. Now my understanding is no, it's not through deprivation that I'm going to strengthen my willpower and my spirit. It's through abundance. So a huge difference. What kind of abundance am I talking about? Abundance of the love of God. The intensification of prayer, the intensification of diving deep into the ocean of his words, diving deep and tuning into divine nutrition. If we are in essence spiritual beings, then surely we need spiritual nutrition as well. When we look at food, food in essence is information. When you look at vitamins, when you go down to the fundamental components, right? Real food, we're talking, not junk food. Real food has energy from the sun. It is living. It has vitamins, minerals. It's vibrating. And when you consume it, it informs your body on so many different levels, on the energetic level, vitamins, minerals, etc. And we use homeopathy in this manner. We use frequency therapy through frequency generating devices. Digital nutrition is the future. By giving your body the frequencies of a specific vitamin or mineral, you no longer need to take that mineral in its crude form, in its physical form. So when we look at the Word of God, which we're supposed to tune into and intensify during this period, from what I understand, you're tapping into divine nutrition, the highest form of nutrition from the top down, which shapes your perception of reality, your perception of yourself, which then your perception affects your thoughts. A man's reality is his thought. Your thought affects your emotion, energy and motion, which then affects your physiology. So the concept of abundance, essentially, which is the fast is not a time of deprivation. It is a time of tapping into the abundance of the ocean of his love, strengthening that primordial connection with that world, just like the baby has the strongest connection, which is the umbilical cord with this world. It receives its nourishment from this world to that world through that primordial connection, yet it remains detached from the world of the womb. It's floating in the amniotic fluid. It's not attached to it. It's not creating strong attachments and obsessions, because if it did, it would not be able to come into this world, right? So in the same manner, we're tapping into that, strengthening that umbilical cord. The mother, our mother being the divine manifestation who is the intermediary between this world and that world. But you guys know this. Many of you guys know this. I'm preaching to the choir. But the main concept I wanted to share is practically, how do we free ourselves from all these vices and addictions and attachments to this world? It's not through deprivation, because that's going to make you worse. And we feel this. We feel this. You're addicted to many different things. You're abstaining during the fast. And so you eat like a monster in the morning. out of fear of deprivation throughout the day. And then when we break the fast, you feast like a monster. I mean, I speak for myself. I used to do that. And I used to see, you know, when we go to these feasts, breaking of the fast, you witness certain things which you wish you wish you had not witnessed. But then you break the fast, and then 2 hours later, another meal. And then at midnight, you know, you stay up, maybe you hide some food underneath your bed. You're just eating because of this deprivation, right? This void. If you're just removing, if you're just abstaining, you're going to aggravate that God-shaped hole in your heart. So the only way to free ourselves, the proper way to free ourselves, is through creating stronger attachments, intensifying our tuning into, our tapping into the love of God, which fills every void. His love is infinite. His love is perfect. His love is unconditional. And in many of the prayers for the fast we read, through thy love, you know, make me independent of all things. With thy love in my heart, all the world's afflictions can in no wise alarm me. God is sufficient unto me. He verily is the all-sufficing. So constantly we are reading in divine scripture and his prayers that his love will so fill your heart that you will not need these attachments anymore. You will be freed. Guaranteed you will be freed of all these attachments and vices which are holding you back, essentially, from reaping the benefit of this earthly life. So just to conclude here, this idea, just abstaining from food and drink can aggravate you during the fast. You're going to eat like a monster in the morning, eat like a monster in the evening, and in fact, not reap the benefit of the physical purification during the fast, because when you're burdening the body with so much food in the morning and evening, throughout the evening, you're not really tapping into the fullest benefits of the fast, because you're overburdening the body with too much food, overeating. And Baha'u'llah talks about this in the Tablet of Medicine. Many of you are familiar with. You're polluting the body, creating fermentation, putrefaction. The body doesn't have time to get rid of the waste, metabolic waste from digestion. When you eat beyond 8 p.m., 9 p.m., you're going into the assimilation cycle, circadian cycle. You're not going to sleep properly now because your stomach is full, et cetera, et cetera. So you actually become more toxic. Some people actually become more toxic by the end of the fast than you did before you started. So you didn't even tap into the physical benefits of the fast. So really going back to realizing the value of intensification and increasing attachment to source, that primordial connection through an intensification of prayers. And this is why I truly believe, for those of you who have the app, the Baha'i Prayer app, there's so many beautiful fasting prayers revealed, 6,000 words, 5,000 words, just pages long, so that you can basically dive deep into the ocean of his words and fill that void and intensify that connection and feel satisfied by reading these prayers, by reciting them, digesting them, assimilating them, allowing that divine nutrition to shape your perception, reshape your thoughts. It's like a chiropractic adjustment of your perception of reality. To feel loved, because essentially divine scripture is a series of love messages. You're constantly being reminded that you are so loved, that you are so worthy. And so you feel amazing. You feel amazing. You feel satisfied. Your inner being is illuminated with his word. And so now when you go to break the fast, you're not in a state of deprivation, ready to go all out, essentially. Or in the morning. In the morning, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be deprived. Boom, massive meal in the morning for breakfast. But no, when you have this mindset throughout the day, these 19 days, I am tapping into the abundance of his love. It's a whole new way of looking at things. Okay, so that's really it. That's really it, guys. That's all I had here on my notepad. Maybe we can open it up for questions and answers, a debate. I'm not sure what John has in mind, what you guys do here.
Well, we do have some questions actually, and we have two from Norbert DuBois. So Norbert, I don't know if your audio quality is fine, but if you want to be able to ask those questions, I think Nabil would be glad to help with those. Unless you speak up.
Okay, I just unmuted.
Okay, cool.
Nabil, thank you so much for this. Even though I've been a Baha'i for more than half a century, I'm still learning, and I thank you for that. And I have to tell you this little bit of humor. Well, after I turned 70, all of my Baha'i friends who were also 70 and were not obligated to fast the next year, I sent them little notes of graduation. I said, "You finally graduated the fasting school after, decades and decades." But a couple of us still from time to time do the fast, or off and on during that time. And you're correct, it's such a time of enlightenment. So it seems that physiologically speaking, one's age, aside from cultural things, have a factor on fasting. And as I got older, I realized, and talking with the doctor, that some of us older folks have to be careful about constipation. So I suggest to those people who do this fast, especially if they're older, not athletic, not active, to make sure that they drink plenty of fluids in the morning with their breakfast, so as to avoid possible constipation. Does that make sense?
Certainly. Another thing to keep in mind is to replace coffee, to replace dehydrating beverages in the morning. Because a lot of people, that's what they drink every day, and they look forward to it in the morning before the sun rises. They drink their coffee, and as many of you know, coffee does dehydrate the body. And if you don't want to worsen and aggravate the dehydration that already takes place during the fast, then maybe opt for some less dehydrating beverages. Another thing you can do is use enemas. Some people are comfortable with using enemas. Well, in the evening, or maybe even in the morning, you could do a water enema to kind of get things going. And some people are not they wouldn't do the enema during the day because they would consider that as hydrating the body through the bowels. And I would agree, because through the bowels is one of the most powerful ways of administering medicine or anything, including water. So, and you wouldn't be reaping the benefit of the medicinal dehydration that takes place throughout the day. But yeah, in the evening, you could do an enema as well if you're dealing with massive constipation.
Good point. And I think Norbert also had a question about tablet of all food. And he was asking whether it refers to food as the knowledge of God. And in addition to the material meaning that Baha'u'llah intended.
You're referring to the tablet of medicine, or tablet to the physician, is that right?
No, this is another tablet. I haven't looked at it in many years, and I remember going to a deepening class. It's a tablet I believe was revealed early in the Baghdad period, and I believe that the word, now, not knowing Arabic or Farsi, I'm not sure of the translation, but somehow I was told that this, and when we read parts of it, that it indicates that this word food is actually representational of knowledge of God. Anyway, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm not personally very familiar with that tablet, but as we know, certainly there's so much inner meaning when it comes to the words of Baha'u'llah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Norbert. Appreciate it. We have a few questions that let's see. Okay, so Jessica Zoubek, she says, I'm not a Baha'i, but in my religion, her Pentecostal faith, we fast for prayer. What tips do you give for someone that's a beginner on fasting?
Beginner, is she interested in doing something similar to the Baha'i fast or just fasting in general? She's interested in exploring fasting.
So, Jessica, if you'd like to unmute, you can specify a little bit if you like.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. And this has been very intuitive and very interesting because I'm very open on all faiths. So I wanted to learn on just fasting in general, what you would recommend for a beginner on that.
Well, that's a good question. A few things to consider when trying to do your first fast is maybe do some research, because there's so many different types of fasting, as you are aware. Ketogenic diet, which is fasting from carbohydrates. There can be dangers to that. Hypoglycemia is one of them. So we like to ease some patients into it. Juice fasting tends to be safe, one of the safest ones, because you're constantly providing the body with nutrients, but it's in a way where the body's not being burdened with digestion. It's in a elemental form so that your body can uptake it and build healthy blood. This is why so many people cure themselves of the incurables just by juice fasting, especially greens, because chlorophyll builds blood like nothing else. There's so much to be said. Ideally, you would work with a detoxification specialist who would assess your goals. One thing is to determine, what are my goals? Is it, I want to heal myself of cancer? Well, then the type of detoxification or fasting would be different. If you want to lose weight, the type of detox or fasting would be also different. If your goal is to get rid of infections in the body, well, starving the infections from sugar is very powerful. The antifungal fasting, the ketogenic diet, same thing, because ketogenic is low carb. So assessing your goals and your symptoms, but on the other hand, also assessing the strength of your detoxification organs and pathways. So that's something that we do too. It's not too difficult. You can do that yourself. You can see, do I sweat easily, or do I don't sweat at all? Well, then your skin, your largest eliminative organ, is compromised. That's something to keep in mind. If you're constipated, you only go to the bathroom once every 2 days, 3 days. Some people I know once a week, then you're severely constipated. If your kidneys aren't filtering, if you're not breathing properly, now we're putting on 2 masks and we're breathing back in the metabolic waste that the body is trying to eliminate through the lungs, which is the fifth, another elimination pathway. We're just breathing that back in. So these are things to consider. For women, you have the fifth elimination channel, which is menstruation, getting rid of a lot of impurities through menstruation. Some women have premenopausal have lost their ability to menstruate. So these are things to look at. How compromised are my elimination pathways, my detoxification pathways, so that you can then design or choose a fast which is less dangerous, because the most important thing is safety when it comes to detox and when it comes to fasting. Unfortunately, modern day doctors have not been trained in fasting. They don't know anything about fasting. In fact, they will tell everybody to not do fasting. It's dangerous. And maybe it's because, I mean, many of you would say that it's because there's no money in prescribing fasting, essentially. You can't patent it, you can't sell it. There's no money in prescribing it. So, and just to add to this, that Baha'u'llah says, people who are sick should not fast. Well, how are you going to determine if You are in a condition. Which doctor are you going to go to nowadays, modern day doctor, who knows anything about fasting and who can tell you that you are fit or not to carry out the Baha'i fast? So this is a gray area, unfortunately, where the individual has to determine themselves. If I'm, because look, everybody has symptoms. Everybody's sick nowadays. So what? Nobody's going to do the fast? So anyways, I thought I'd mention that too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Those are great points. And Jessica also says thank you. So there is a quote someone shared from Some Answered Questions of Abdul Baha. I think it's also apt to share now as it's relevant. It says, now let us speak of material healing. The science of medicine is still in a condition of infancy. It has not reached maturity. But when it has reached this point, cures will be performed by things which are not repulsive to the smell and taste of man. That is to say, by aliments, fruits, and vegetables, which are agreeable to the taste and have an agreeable smell. For the provoking cause of disease, that is to say, the cause of entrance of disease into the body, is either a physical one or is the effective excitement of the nerves. Thank you for sharing that quote. There is an anonymous question, and I think it's two parts. First, the question was, do you know the app you were referencing? The person that asked this question says that they're brand new to the faith and they think the app that you shared would be helpful.
Sure. So there are many Baha'i prayer apps. I recommend just going to the App Store and typing in Baha'i prayers. And there's 2 or 3 which are pretty decent. One of them has a green icon, which I really like, which includes a compass, which can help you direct yourself to the Qibla, which we use the direction of the resting place of Baha'u'llah to recite the obligatory prayer, which for me is actually this way, right? Looking at you guys at the camera, I'm looking at the Qibla. And the other thing the app has is the 95 taps. So every day Baha'u'llah has counseled his followers to recite Allahu Akbar, which means God is the most glorious. And we need to do that 95 times. And so back in the old days, we used to use the beads and count it, and Muslims are familiar with the bead, using the beads as well. I think they say Allahu Akbar, which is God is the most great, but now the beauty of the Lord has so intensified. Now we say, no, God is not the most great. He is the most glorious. And so you just basically tap on your phone and you can close your eyes and you can focus essentially. So that's an awesome feature of the app as well. But I wanted to make a comment on the quote that was shared. I appreciate that quote that was shared, and I want to say that we are already there. You know how in the quote it is said, he says that in the future we will reach, medicine will get to a place where we can cure all ailments or most ailments through foods. We are already there, but this knowledge is being suppressed. The practitioners who are using it are being shadow banned and censored, such as myself on my YouTube channel. Been shadow banned since 2019. All the doctors who are curing the incurables through the use of food, using food as medicine to restore the alkaline design of the body, the purity of the body. The only true model of disease is the Antoine Béchamp theory, not the fraudulent Pasteurian model of disease comes from the outside and it's flying all around the place. That model serves the establishment well because it lays the foundation for selling you and pushing these poisons and so-called treatments on you, inoculations and drug therapy, which mask symptoms and produce new diseases, radiation, chemo poison, etc. But the Antoine Béchamp theory was the true one, which was suppressed, quickly suppressed, because there's no money to be made when you are educated enough to know that you create disease and you also have the power to create health. And the terrain theory of disease is the only true one, which basically states that once your terrain becomes compromised, you become sick. Very simple. Your cells, your healthy cells, mutate when your terrain, your interstitial fluids, your interstitium, which is your inner ocean, which was discovered in 2019 by the scientific community, but modern day doctors will never be trained in recognizing the inner ocean, the terrain, because by doing so, they'd have to treat it. And then by treating it, you'd get cured and the system would collapse. The system thrives, as many of you know, on making people sick and keeping them sick. But so when it comes to foods, all the doctors, you want to know where the truth is? Look at all the doctors who are being thrown into jail and persecuted and killed. Study their work. You'll find one common thread, which is what? They all used foods to restore the alkaline design of your body, to restore the purity of your terrain. Very simple. And that's what I use. That's what I do. So we've already gotten there, but it's being heavily suppressed. And some of you are familiar with this concept. For those who have a Persian background, they're familiar with the concept of sardi and garmi, cooling foods and warming foods. Elections. The Chinese traditional medicine, they are familiar with the concept of cold and hot as well. And in the West, what do we call it? It took me many years to put two and two together. We call cooling and warming alkaline and acidic. And we are dealing with an epidemic of acidosis, systemic poisoning and acidosis. From all the poison drugs you've been given, from all the poisonous inoculations, from all the poisons in your food, glyphosate, atrazine, fluoride, chlorine. I mean, the list goes on and on. Antibiotics, left and right for everything. Antibiotics in your food supply. The infections, the candida infections growing in your gut, producing mycotoxins, which are poisoning you 24/7. Mycotoxins are fungal poisons, some of the most cancer-causing chemicals known to man. So we're dealing with, and then your diet. And then your diet is so acidic. The modern day Western diet, high protein, high carbohydrate, coffee, extremely acidic. Black tea, extremely acidic. Juices, sugar, it's one of the most acidic. This is why Abdu'l-Baha says in an untranslated writing that sugar is poison, essentially. And in fact, it is. In fact, sugar is a metabolic waste. The more a fruit rots, the sweeter it becomes. And then mold starts to grow from out of it. Pleomorphism. So anyways, I just wanted to make that comment that we already have the knowledge so that disease becomes negligible, non-existent. I know this is wild for most people to believe, but when you know what I know, when you've been in the business for as long as I have and you've seen what I've seen, and you use the therapies I use and you guide people who are supposed to be dead, who are given death sentences, who are supposed to be depopulated, when you see them living and they are able to save themselves through education, more education, less medication, you realize that 99% of all diseases or more is created by the industry and the establishment itself. When we look at how far we've come in every aspect of society and technology, more inventions and achievements than ever before, more in the past 100 years than in the past 10,000 years. Why are we still in the ancient barbaric ages when it comes to medicine, to the point where no doctor has been trained to restore the integrity of any of your organs? The only approach is to cut them out and to mask your symptoms using toxic drugs which produce new diseases. Are you kidding me? And burning things out with radiation and poisoning you with chemo. Like, come on. So
there is a
anyways.
quote I would like to introduce. There is a quote on this subject of what Nabil was talking about. For those of you who are interested in the Baha'i writings and the approach that Nabil is referencing with regards to foods being a way to cure. Nabil, can you tell me, do you see my screen? No, you don't. I haven't shared it yet. All right. Tell me if you see it now. Do you see it?
Now I do, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm using an app called Ocean 2.0 Reader. You can download it now on your laptop. You can download it on your smartphone, what have you. It doesn't matter if it's a Mac or a Windows. You can use it anywhere. The application I'm sharing with you is showing a book from selections of the writings of Abdul Baha. And I want you all to actually listen to this because this is on point as to what Nabil is talking about. Nabil, please, I'm going to play and pause. Tell me if you can hear it, or Jeremiah, tell me if I have to select something to share my computer audio. Do I have to? I think I have an option to do that. Okay, I'm going to share my sound. Tell me if it's fine. Just give me a thumbs up, Nabil. Could you do that, please? I'm going to have it play. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it quite well.
O thou who art attracted to the fragrant breathings, O friends of the pure and omnipotent God, to be pure and holy, O friends of...
No, that was the wrong one. I was on 134. I hopped around. I don't know. Here we are.
O thou who art attracted to the fragrant breathings of God. I have read thy letter addressed to Mrs. Lua Getzinger. Thou hast indeed examined with great care the reasons for the incursion of disease into the human body. It is certainly the case that sins are a potent cause of physical ailments. If humankind were free from the defilements of sin and waywardness, and lived according to a natural inborn equilibrium, without following wherever their passions led, it is undeniable that diseases would no longer take the ascendant, nor diversify with such intensity. But man hath perversely continued to serve his lustful appetites, and he would not content himself with simple foods. Rather, he prepared for himself food that was compounded of many ingredients, of substances differing one from the other. With this, and with the perpetrating of vile and ignoble acts, his attention was engrossed, and he abandoned the temperance and moderation of a natural way of life. The result was the engendering of diseases both violent and diverse. For the animal, as to its body, is made up of the same constituent elements as man. Since, however, the animal contenteth itself with simple foods, and striveth not to indulge its importunate urges to any great degree, and committeth no sins, its ailments, relative to man's, are few. We see clearly, therefore, how powerful are sin and contumacy as pathogenic factors, and once engendered, these diseases become compounded, multiply, and are transmitted to others. Such are the spiritual, inner causes of sickness. The outer physical causal factor in disease, however, is a disturbance in the balance, the proportionate equilibrium of all those elements of which the human body is composed. To illustrate, the body of man is a compound of many constituent substances, each component being present in a prescribed amount, contributing to the essential equilibrium of the whole. So long as these constituents remain in their due proportion, according to the natural balance of the whole, that is, no component suffereth a change in its natural proportionate degree and balance, no component being either augmented or decreased, there will be no physical cause for the incursion of disease. For example, the starch component must be present to a given amount, and the sugar to a given amount. So long as each remaineth in its natural proportion to the whole, there will be no cause for the onset of disease. When, however, these constituents vary as to their natural and due amounts, that is, when they are augmented or diminished, it is certain that this will provide for the inroads of disease. This question requireth the most careful investigation. the Bab has said that the people of Baha must develop the science of medicine to such a high degree that they will heal illnesses by means of foods. The basic reason for this is that if in some component substance of the human body an imbalance should occur, altering its correct relative proportion to the whole, this fact will inevitably result in the onset of disease. If, for example, the starch component should be unduly augmented or the sugar component decreased, an illness will take control. It is the function of a skilled physician to determine which constituent of his patient's body hath suffered diminution, which hath been augmented. Once he hath discovered this, he must prescribe a food containing the diminished element in considerable amounts to re-establish the body's essential equilibrium. The patient, once his constitution is again in balance, will be rid of his disease.
So the rest of this passage, this is item number 134 in Selections from the Writings of Abdu'l-Baha. The rest of this passage can be read in the book Selections from the Writings of Abdu'l-Baha. And this is found on the Ocean 2.0 Interfaith Reader app. If you go onto Google and just type in Ocean 2.0 Interfaith Reader, you'll be directed to this application, the website to download it. You can download it on your Apple device, your Android device, your smartphone, your computer, what have you. So just take a look. And also, as you see, it reads to you, and you can, if you wanted to highlight a word and define it, you can do that. But that's aside from the point. Nabil, I'm done sharing my screen. It was very apt given the topic you were talking about. If people have questions in the writings, this is the support in the writings for what you're talking about as to medicine and how Baha'is should view it.
Thanks for sharing that. So many gems in this thing. I don't even know where to start, but if I could just share a few thoughts, quick thoughts on that. One of the things we have a few writings where either Abdu'l-Baha or Baha'u'llah says that true healing is spiritual healing. And if physical healing is not reinforced with spiritual healing, then it's temporary. And we know this. We know this for a fact because spiritual healing is from the inside out or from the top down, right? You nourish your perception, you adjust your perception of reality of yourself, of the purpose of life, and then your perception affects your thoughts, emotions, physiology. So to do the fast merely for physical benefits of what uses physical health, if you're missing out also on eternal life, on eternity, on becoming awakened to the life of your spirit and preparing one's soul. But the other thing I want to just touch up on is the concept of sin, which the quote mentioned, that yes, sin is a leading cause or strong contributor to disease. And a lot of people don't like to hear that because, again, most people are sick nowadays. And they're like, what are you saying? You're saying I'm a sinner? Is that what you're saying? So they go into defensive mode and whatnot. But one way to look at it is sin is really, in a way, synonymous with ignorance, essentially, the way I look at it. Through ignorance, we sin. Through ignorance, we do not abide by the universal, not only spiritual laws, but universal natural laws. We don't live in alignment with our circadian cycles, natural circadian cycles. We sleep during the day, sleep late at night. We expose our eyes to lights. After the sun has gone down, we eat late at night. We eat a huge breakfast when we shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. Sin, another good example is the epidemic of addiction to pornography amongst the youth, the younger generation. Well, I have a lot of youngsters coming to me because they are dealing with a plethora of symptoms and diseases because they're masturbating 3 times a day, 5 times a day. I had one gentleman, I couldn't believe it, 20 times a day. Like, how can you do that, right? So that's an example as to how lust, which is really born out of deficiency void, that God-shaped hole, not tapping into that, not feeling loved, then you have to carry material things to excess, essentially. And by carrying anything to excess, whether it's sugar, cakes, cookies, pornography, masturbation, video games, entertainment, etc., wealth, greed, it's going to, whatever you carry to excess, it's going to burden the body, essentially. So that's another way to look at the concept of sin. But there were so many gems, I forget. Oh, and the other one, just to mention, finish off here, is the components that is referred to, the different elements in the body. There's so many similarities for those of you who may have already done research with humoral medicine, the 4 humors in the body, which is taught by Ibn Sina or Avicenna, who is the author of the Canon of Medicine. So he talks about atrabilious humor, black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. So that's something humoral doctors, which are very few nowadays in Europe, they restore the proportion, the proper proportion of these different fluids in the body, elements, and they restore the health of their patient. For me, I really resonate with when they were talking about sugar, adjusting the starch component in the human body. And yes, we are dealing with an epidemic of too much sugar. I mean, more than ever before. In everything you eat, in the yogurt, there's sugar. In the meat you buy, just look at the ingredients, sugar. In the bread you buy, sugar. I mean, there's sugar in everything. And this is why the ketogenic diet, for example, which is low carb, refraining from carbohydrates and sugars, is not a fad diet that's coming and going. It's been around, it's sticking around, and it's helping so many people because it's enabling them, it's helping them reduce and detoxify this excess starch in the body, which is causing hypoxia and a bunch of other diseases. Okay, that's it for me.
So Miss Farida, she has her hand raised.
Just I want to say thank you so much, Nabil John, as the Baha'i youth. Wow, I'm proud of you. You said you done very, very well. Whatever was my heart, you said. But only I want to add one thing. I was as the Baha'i youth, I was in the house of Hands of the Cause, Jalal Khaze for 1 year. And the fasting time, I don't get up morning because I don't want to eat and I sleep. And the second day he said, Hands of the God, Farida John, why you don't get up morning? I said, I think the blessing of God is more. I don't eat morning. He said, no, morning important to get up and pray and meditation. Even you're not hungry, prayer and meditation is important. That I learned about that. But thank you so much about the sugar and all the chemical, all the food in America, killing million people. Everything sugar is poison. 1,000 times I said, John, stop the sugar. Sorry for you, John. I attacked John. Anyway, the last thing I remember, Nabil John, you came several times to the Baha'i Conference Social Economic in Orlando. You was doing singing, rap, this. You can close it with that some of things you was doing in the Social Economic Conference. Make me very happy. Love you, Baha'i blessing. All of you, you and John and the Baha'i you. Thank you.
Thank you, Farida John. Number one, I'm not a youth anymore. Dige piremard shodim. Piremard in Farsi means an old man. Number two, just to add to what you said about, there are many youngsters, including myself when I was growing up, we also wouldn't wake up. We'd just be like, sometimes you just don't wake up and I rather sleep in. So you'll sleep late and then you'll sleep in to like 11 noon. And so you're shortening the amount of time. So you make the fast easier for yourself. But then again, we're only fooling ourselves. One of the benefits, besides the spiritual component, sunrise, waking up, and acknowledging how, in the morning prayer, we recite, I have awakened in thy shelter, O my God, and it becometh him that seeketh that shelter to abide within the sanctuary of thy protection and the stronghold of thy defense. Illumine my inner being, O my Lord, with the splendors of the day spring of thy revelation, even as thou didst illumine my outer being with the morning light of thy favor. As the sun is coming up, you are also tuning into that sun of truth, that eternal sun of truth. So besides the spiritual component, we know as part of the circadian cycle, and Baha'u'llah teaches this in the Tablet of Medicine too, he says, a little food in the morning is as a light to the body. It illuminates the body. It purifies the body. Why? Because of the natural detoxification circadian cycle, which takes place in the morning. If you have a huge meal, like they tell you to, the modern day dietitians and registered nutritionists and modern day doctors, they say the breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Therefore, you need to have a hearty, big, fat meal. If you do that, you're burdening the body with too much food. All the focus is going to go towards digestion. You will not be able to tap into the daily purification cycle that takes place, which allows you to maintain your purity, the integrity of your terrain. Again, Antoine Béchamp. One of the other reasons why we're dealing with an epidemic of systemic acidosis and inner pollution and cancer, because it all comes from the same thing, hypoxia, mutation, etc., is because these fundamental, powerful truths which have been taught by the divine physician, which outwardly may seem insignificant, a little in the morning is as a light to the human body. Like, what does that even mean, right? But if we were to observe that and just have just enough, a mouthful, just something to ignite and initiate metabolism so that your body can now start tapping into detoxification and purification, you're going to maintain the purity of your body for the rest of your life. You know what I'm saying? So I just thought I'd mention that when we sleep in, we also deprive ourselves of eating that little bit in the morning during the fast, which initiates the detoxification and metabolic processes and autophagy, etc.
So we got an anonymous question, and this person is asking a multi-part question. First, are you a plant-based person or vegan? And second, how do you help your potential clients that you would work with who have no current ailments but are seeking to better their health? And she asked multiple parts. I'll just stick with these two for now.
Sure. So the second question is a quicker one. I have a website, soreadyforhealth.com. You guys can go there, check it out. Different services, different therapies, different tests, and also courses. I believe in more education, less medication. And that's really all it takes. Believe me, you don't have to. This concept of keeping you in the dark your whole life in matters pertaining to health, suppressing the truth, murdering, extraditing, delicensing, intimidating all doctors and scientists that cure anything, and creating a sort of establishment, brainwashing you to believe that disease is flying around, comes from the outside in. You have no power over your health. This whole system is fake, essentially. All you need is education, and you have the capacity to heal yourself and maintain the purity of your body, and never get sick and never fear illness and even cancer. 1 in every 2, according to their statistic, will get cancer nowadays. So education is the medicine of the future, in my opinion. You have the capacity, but we've been brainwashed since childhood to believe that only a select few individuals, the smartest kids in the class, who can get into medical school, and then they study for 10, 13 years, and then they don't even understand health. You ask them any basic question, they don't know anything about health. They know everything about, the study of disease and masking your symptoms. And so then you think to yourself, if they don't know, how could I ever know? It's this mysterious science. But let me tell you, with education, just like anything else in life, you learn how to drive a car, how to wash your clothes, how to cook some food. You can learn how to protect yourself and your family, reclaim your health, and never get sick ever again. So that's number one. And so I provide courses. That's the main way I educate people, empower people through my courses. Second question was, or the first question you had was, are you plant-based? If you're talking about in my therapy, I can adjust to the needs of the patient, because I have some vegan patients who are very sick. They're open-minded to using some high-quality meat products to reclaim their health. And we use meat, we introduce meat, and they get better. You know, Baha'u'llah in the tablet of medicine, he says that there is a place for meat. He says that if thy constitution is weak, partake of animal flesh, which should, I'm paraphrasing now, which should contain the elements of herbs and nuts and seeds. Nowadays it doesn't. The meat has been turned to poison. So that's why you feel better when you get off of it. But so we use organ therapy like Hippocrates. Since the time of Hippocrates, if your liver is weak, eat some liver. If your adrenals are weak, so many people are dealing with adrenal fatigue, we use adrenal glandulars. If you're a hardcore vegan, which I can respect for very important reasons, then we use other means. We use adaptogenic herbs, we use nutrition therapy, we get at the root of what's causing stress, infections in the gut, etc. But personally, no, I'm not a vegan. I'm not. I eat meat in moderation. I mean, the divine manifestations of God, which one of them did not eat meat? Which one of them did not eat milk, cheese, etc.? None of them were vegan. And to some people, you know, they say, Nabil, you're such a hypocrite. You claim to be spiritual, you strive to be spiritual, but you eat meat. Sometimes I do, in moderation, high quality meat, and eggs, etc. But, you know, who are we to say that you can't be spiritual if you eat meat, when the divine manifestations themselves, who are the embodiments of the mouthpiece of the Lord, the divine architect, the compassionate one, when they ate meat, when they did not prohibit meat, when they say use it medicinally, yes, there is talk, and I'm familiar with the writings about a future where we eat less meat, where it's more plant-based, but we have a long way to go. I don't believe in the abuse of animals. We can raise animals and love them their whole lives, treat them very nicely, and then take their life. It's not hypocritical, in my opinion. They live a nice life, and then humanely, they don't even know that they're dying, that you killed them. So many humane animal husbandry YouTube videos, they show you exactly how to do it, where you slit the throat in a way where the animal doesn't even know, just passes away very peacefully. A very beautiful concept, which I think DuBois shares, is the concept of within suffering, there is blessing. Blessing in disguise, or behind the curtain of tyranny, there's mercy. Something like that. Or my calamity is my providence. Outwardly, it is fire and vengeance, but inwardly, it is light and mercy. And DuBois explains somewhere, excuse me, I don't have the reference, but some of you may be familiar, where he explains the different kingdoms, the mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, human kingdom, and then the kingdom of God, these 5 different kingdoms. And he says the highest attainment for a lower kingdom is to serve and be promoted to the kingdom above. The mineral kingdom is assimilated by the plant kingdom, for example, and now experiences reality through that plant, new features, you know what I'm saying? And then the plant is what? It can't move. It's stuck, right, in the soil. The plant is eaten by the animal and is assimilated into the animals, promoted into a higher kingdom, serves the higher kingdom. And now the animals moving around, now that plant has the power and partakes of the power of movement, for example, of sensation through the animal, by dying to itself and living in the kingdom of the animal kingdom. Now the animal, it should not be abused. No, it shouldn't be abused and tortured like we see. Whenever you overstep the boundaries of moderation, Baha'u'llah says anything good will be carried to excess. But within moderation, you treat the animals right. I mean, now so many studies and science is showing that animals, having animals is the most effective way of restoring the integrity of the soils which have been destroyed. And so the animal, by serving the human being, the highest creation of God, is attaining unto its highest destiny as well. Now that doesn't mean that we should abuse them and torture them. You know, in the old days, they used to use donkeys and cows to transport things. Sure, you can use them, but don't abuse them. You know, like give them water, give them food, let them rest, etc. Because if, I just speak for myself, if the animal had free will, it would willingly offer up its life for us human beings, the higher creation, the higher kingdom, just as how we as human beings, we are being called upon to sacrifice the human condition, to die to the human condition and live in him. If thou lovest me, turn away from thyself, right? And if thou seekest my good pleasure, then seek not thine own, something to that extent. So we are called to self-sacrifice. We're called to sacrifice the human condition, your desires, your wants, your will for his will, and thereby being promoted to that eternal kingdom and attaining our highest destiny. The highest destiny for man is what? That of servitude, serving that higher kingdom. So this concept of killing an animal, eating it is bad. I mean, from a spiritual perspective, for me, I think there's a middle path. There's a middle path, and we're dealing with two extremes right now, a debate. There's definitely a middle path, in my opinion. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but I think it's one of those topics which is quite interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you. There is a lot of Baha'i quotes on these subjects that we've spoken about. And one of the most important things for Baha'is, which we also encourage all of you, Baha'i or not, to also do, is investigate. Investigate these things that Nabil has been talking about. Do your independent investigation and use some of the resources that have been provided. Definitely the references made to a lot of subjects. Look into them and don't let what you're looking at be the end, but let it be a beginning of your search. And hopefully it will, if you're doing it right, last your whole life. So that being said, Nabil, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here in Clearwater, Florida, for joining us. We really appreciate it. This has been a very filling session. And I know
Thanks
those of you,
Thanks for having me anytime.
Yes, yes. And more importantly, those of you who have asked questions and who want to follow up with Nabil. Nabil, how would you like us to follow up with you? Would you like it that they send to Clearwater Baha'is and we forward to you those questions? How would you like that?
Yeah, you could do it any way you like. You can comment in this video. From what I understand, you posted on the Clearwater YouTube channel. I'll take a glance at some of the comments and see if I can answer some unanswered questions. You can, I do go live on my Shadow Band YouTube channel. So you can pop up every other day. I go online for like an hour. I do health Q&As completely free of charge. I answer everybody's questions, more education, less medication. So you can pop in and ask more questions there if you have health related questions as well.
And also, I think not just your YouTube channel, but the website that we've shared a few times, but it's www.soreadyforhealth.com, right? Is that another place people can reach out to you?
Yeah. They can reach me there too. I have by the way, I have a Telegram channel, So Ready for Health. I have a podcast, So Ready for Health. So these are other decentralized, uncensored platforms that you can tune into, because YouTube will not give you notifications even if you subscribe to my channel there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good places to look. And more importantly, if you cannot somehow use all those means to contact him, by all means, You can always come to clearwaterbahais.org, send us a message, and one of us, God willing, will get the message to Nabil. So again, thank you, everyone. We wish you a beautiful day, a beautiful Sunday, be it your morning or your afternoon. And we have our session again next week. Nabil, we look forward to having you join us again. Thank you so much.